How much pressure do you need from your espresso machine? Some espresso machine makers quote a bar pressure of 15 bars or even more than that. And most, when you actually measure them, only put out about 6 to 9 bars of pressure. For this video, we're just going to look at the ideal pressure for an espresso machine. We're going to be discussing this pressure and why it is important for the extraction of the coffee. And this will help you to make better decisions when it comes to buying a coffee maker, so you can get one that's going to last a long period of time. So first of all, what is this pressure thing? We talk about bars of pressure. Well, 1 bar is basically the pressure at sea level. So 2 bars will be double that pressure, and 10 bars is 10 times that pressure. So pressure is important because you need to push the water through the grinds, and that helps the extraction process. But the most important thing is actually the duration of the shot rather than the pressure with which the water is forced through. So what's the deal with these machines that are being sold as 15 bar machines, and then you measure them and you get somewhere between 6 and 9 bars? Well, the machine is actually rated for the 15 or the 12 or whatever bars it is. So the internal mechanisms can theoretically produce that pressure and hold that pressure. In reality though, they dial this back. Now, why would you dial back the pressure? Well, you think about the long-term reliability of the coffee maker. If you had a choice of 2 cars, a 1-litre city car and a Ferrari, I know which I'd choose, and you were going to be using them at 70 miles an hour consistently day in, day out, the Ferrari would probably last a lot longer because it's not operating anywhere near its maximum capacity, whereas the 1-litre city car will be fairly near to its maximum capacity and will be struggling to maintain the 70 miles an hour. And there's another key element to think about, and that's the consistency with which the pressure is produced by the machine. If you were to measure it and be a real nerd, you would notice that the actual pressure varies throughout the shot. So some machines, the more expensive machines, have actually got a pre-dosing pressure which saturate the grinds. They do that to avoid the channels. That's where the extraction takes channels through the coffee grinds, and you don't get as good an extraction from all of the coffee. There's basically over extractions where these channels have formed within the portafilter. So by pre-dosing, you're wetting the grinds and you're preventing that risk of channeling. So those machines will typically start off with a fairly low pressure to allow that pre-dosing to happen. And then what typically happens is you see the pressure changing as the shot comes through the portafilter. So the coffee itself, if it's very fresh coffee, is producing CO2 gas, and that CO2 gas is again pressing against the water coming in, and the machine has got to work a lot harder to maintain that pressure. So the higher the bar rating of the machine, the more easily it's going to cope with these differences between different grind finenesses, different freshnesses of coffee. So how many bars do you need? Well, most people will aim for about 9 bars. That seems to produce the most consistent coffee, but it will vary. If you're using very fresh coffee as opposed to stale coffee or fine ground coffee, you may find that a higher bar pressure produces a better tasting coffee. But as with anything we do with our coffee makers, the best thing we can do is to do a trial and error approach to each shot that we pull, just to make sure that we are adjusting the settings on the machine to suit our taste buds. So a relatively cheap home machine like this, it won't have an adjustment for pressure in it. So you're kind of stuck with what the manufacturer produces. But this little baby has been really loyal to me, and it's actually produced about 20,000 coffees in its lifetime. So it's lasted really well. So that was certainly an advantage to buying one with a higher rating bar pressure than maybe a cheaper one, which probably wouldn't have lasted anywhere near as long as this one has. If we go below 6 bars, you're starting to really struggle to get the extraction. So if you're pulling double shots and you're using fresh coffee, the machine is going to really struggle to maintain that consistent pressure, and that's going to suffer when it comes to the actual taste of the shot that you manage to extract. So the bar pressure is quite important. If you carefully monitored it like a nerd, you'll learn a lot about coffee and the extraction process and how different grinds and different freshnesses of coffee affect the pressure. But ideally you want a fairly long duration of extraction to just fully maximize all the bits and pieces that come out of the grinds to give your cup that unique flavor and body. But in some instances, the lighter roasts, for example, you may want a slightly shorter extraction time and a slightly higher pressure, or maybe even slightly lower pressure, and that will adjust the flavor profile that you're getting from your coffee bean. Ignore the labeling on the machine to an extent. The higher bar pressures are just really a mark that the machine is quality and will last a long time. It's not necessarily an indication of how many bars the machine will put out in daily use, but you want that consistency with every shot that you pull. So thanks for watching. Please boot that like button. That really does help us to get out there. And I've lined this video up for you to just help you to get the best out of your coffee making and understand the art of great coffee. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in this next video.